Today marks 10 years since a police officer shot and killed 12-year-old Tamir Rice at a Cleveland park. Family and community members gathered to remember his legacy today. We'll hear from Tamir's mother in just a moment, but first, a look back at how we got here. Here's Matt Rescone.
Sadness and anger tonight after a Cleveland police officer shoots a 12-year-old.
For 10 years, the story of what unfolded at Cudell Park has captured headlines.
This story is making international headlines now. Our newsroom getting calls from as far away as Dublin overnight.
For what the shooting caused and who was lost.
Happy birthday to you.
In November 2014, 12-year-old Tamir Rice was at the park with what we now know was a black airsoft gun. A 911 caller said he was probably a teen with a gun that might be fake, but dispatchers didn't relay all of that to police.
Wearing a camouflage hat, a gray jacket with black sleeves, so he keeps pulling a gun out of his pants.
Responding officers pulled right up to the gazebo, and within 2 seconds, Officer Timothy Loehmann got out and shot Tamir twice. Protests erupted within days, followed by calls for both Loehmann and the driver, Frank Garmback, to be fired. County Prosecutor Tim McGinty resisted calls to step aside.
Turn up, have no fear, we do this for Tamir.
Then in December 2015, 13 months after Tamir was killed,
the grand jury declined to bring criminal charges against Cleveland police officers Timothy Loehmann and Frank Garmback.
Loehmann would continue with the department until May 2017, when Cleveland fired him, not for shooting Tamir, but for lying about his work history. The Justice Department would ultimately investigate the shooting, but in 2020, prosecutors found insufficient evidence for federal charges against the officers. Crews broke down the gazebo that hung over the infamous scene in 2016. It's now on display in Chicago. The Rice Butterfly Memorial Garden has marked the spot at Cudell Park since 2022, a permanent reminder of what was lost 10 years ago. And Officer Garmback is still an officer in Cleveland. In 2016, the city agreed to pay Tamir's family $6 million to settle a civil rights lawsuit, but it did not admit any wrongdoing. Russ?
Matt, I know you and I talked about this. This case became part of the discussion in the city's consent decree back in 2015, right?
Yeah, that's right. So the shooting happened while the U.S. Department of Justice was investigating the Cleveland Police Department. Within a month or two after Tamir's death, the DOJ determined the police department had engaged in a pattern and practice of excessive force. The city then entered into that consent decree to correct those practices. And of course, 10 years later, that continues. But the latest report in September showed the city had made progress in the consent decree in areas like community trust and use of force.
All right, Matt Rescone in the newsroom. Thank you.